Thanks, Arilda. So thank you for joining us, everyone. And Jan Thomas, thank you as ever for being our ambassador and advocate. It's a real privilege to be back with you all. So what we're going to walk you through today is what we call our open source hardware challenge. This was something we kicked off in March, April this year in partnership with Hackster, Intel, Google, about 15 partners. And the aim behind it was to crowdsource global open source hardware solutions. I'll talk through in a moment what open source hardware is, some of the solutions, and then hand over to colleagues in country offices who have been doing some great work on the ground, taking a lot of this forward as well. So just on the next slide, over the course of this year, we ran this challenge globally on the Hackster platform. We ended up with participation from more than 60 countries. Exciting part of this was almost half of them were from low and middle income countries, and also saw more than 350 submissions coming in. And if we move to the next slide, when we talk about a submission, these are fully fledged innovations. So all the innovations you see here and about 340 others available on the website, which we'll link to later. Everything from UV robots to video call buttons, digital stethoscopes, and so on. And what's particularly exciting is when we say fully fledged, all the code, all the hardware schematics, all the 3D printing files, all the instructions to go from a list of components through to building a digital stethoscope that plugs into an Android smartphone are available for country officers to download and start testing and applying on the ground. So if we just move to the next slide. So I want to kind of broadly talk about two innovations at each kind of extreme of the spectrum that we had submitted. So the first one here is something called Project FIA. You're probably seeing many of these pop up around the world in your local communities, but at its heart, it's a temperature scanner. It looks like a little kind of plastic gun. It's held to the forehead and it'll measure someone's temperature. But what the team also built into this is a wireless transmitter. That means you can then measure the temperature at kind of a community level. So you can monitor fluctuations in community temperature, which could be an interesting kind of trigger or catalyst for a wider spread of COVID, and then could also prompt or inform interventions as well. So the solution here, it would take a day or so to build from end to end, but all the CAD files, all the design files, all the code to get this functioning is all available on the website immediately. And then if we move to the next slide, this is an innovation that came in from a local, I think, university student in Nigeria. Essentially, it is a hand wash facility that is all touchless. And what we have on the website here is essentially the 3D printing files that you need to build this, but also the code that you can add into a very small microcomputer. Most of these solutions can be made for 10 to 15 US dollars, some even less. And so with this, you follow the instructions from end to end, you add in the code that's on the screen there, and it will start functioning as a contactless hand washing facility. What we see is really exciting potential here is that it means country officers and your local partners can start applying these solutions without having to go to the private sector, but also you can start building innovation ecosystems locally. So instead of importing hand washing facilities from elsewhere, working with local communities, you can build these solutions and also build skills that are going to be very important for COVID-19 recovery. With that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Peter from Tanzania, who's going to walk through what they've been doing around one of the MAKERTHONs.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Kellen. So in Tanzania, we conducted the MAKERTHON around September this year, and this MAKERTHON was a collaboration between UNDP Accelerator Lab here in Tanzania, but also with other innovation hubs, as mentioned there, Robotech, DIT Design Studio, and other partners. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as we prepared this MAKERTHON, so over 60 young innovators who came from across the city of Dar es Salaam mostly, and a few from outside Dar es Salaam, they came together to prototype different products. And one prototype cost was around 40 to 70 US dollars. So for example, for either a pulse oximeter or for infrared thermometer. And like I said in the previous slide, in doing this, we also included other makers from Dar es Salaam, the labs that I mentioned there. that is Beaten Bites, but also STIC Labs and the Rural Labs. All these innovation spaces are based in the city of Dar es Salaam. Next slide, please. Yeah, so some of the prototypes that we built include face shields, and these are over 3,000 face shields were distributed within clinics and hospitals across the city of Dar es Salaam. And also we had infrared thermometers, pulse oximeters, and also touchless water faucets that were built during this time in this MAKERTHON. And also we try to rotate these equipments in different hospitals so that they could be tested and validated. But obviously, with face shields, we immediately got a good response from the beneficiaries, since the face shield don't require much validation and testing. Yes, and then also we got feedback as well for other different equipments or prototypes that were built. Next slide, please. And then, so what next? After we distributed these equipments to hospitals, of course, we waited to get feedback from hospitals through surveys. And the biggest challenge has been the issue of accuracy, cost, accessibility, and reach throughout Tanzania. But we are trying to respond to these issues so that we can have these equipments ready and accepted by the health system in Tanzania. And so eventually we can get investment in some of these products in order to have them manufactured commercially in the country so that they can be distributed to whoever who needs it across the country. So that's what we did in Tanzania in brief. I'll pass this back over to Kalam or Evan, South Africa. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I think, Evan, do you want to jump in?
Sure, thanks very much, Callum. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to all present. Next slide, please. So Callum has touched on this fairly well, but just in brief, so UNDP South Africa, we took consignment of the equipment and material to build test some of the winning innovations resulting from the Detect and Protect Challenge, which was launched last month. With these materials, we partnered with the local university's digital innovation precinct called Chimolokong, as well as the local Hacks the Community to host a MAKERTHON to challenge local innovators to build some of the innovations. Next slide, please. As Callum mentioned, there were quite a few innovations to choose from. So to identify them, we spoke to some of our partners, some of our CEO partners, and through a survey, we let them decide which one of the innovations they felt would be most relevant for the South African context. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Can you just go up one? I just want to make sure that I didn't miss everything. So this slide kind of highlights what the current COVID context is in South Africa. So from our initial case on the 1st of March, we are now currently the country with the highest number of COVID cases in Africa and the 16th in the world. Fortunately, we have a relatively low death rate. Next slide, please. So the important lessons learned, I think, just to note, the 4 innovations that we chose were the pulse oximeter, the contactless thermometer, a face detection technology, in addition to I think it was another fingerprint reader of some sort. But some of the important lessons that we've learned are the following. So around design sprint events specifically, MAKERTHONs, hackathons, whichever you want to call it. Currently, the shine around hackathons has kind of diminished. Innovation people tend to move away from them now, but I still, and us in the office still believe that they have value. So for example, the major value is that hackathons stimulate the type of environment that breeds innovation. So limited time frame, risk-taking is encouraged. These are the type of things that really force people to innovate. A second point is the importance of partners. So obviously, the role of the UNDP is not to be experts in any or every field, but rather to serve as conveners and bring in the relevant experts into the specific context. And with Chimolokong, they really helped us along in trying to develop a makeathon that was engaging, that was stimulating, that really provided the best environment for the innovators to thrive. Next slide, please. But most importantly, it's the actual makers that are the benefit of a makeathon. So what COVID-19 really has done, it's brought to the world's attention how quickly A, things can change, and B, the necessity of agile thinking to overcome challenges. However, this type of mentality is not new to makers or developers. It's kind of their inbuilt way of thinking. They are a collection of people who aren't satisfied with the way things are operating, and they are prepared to do something about it, regardless of the state of the world, whether it's COVID or not. And collecting these people into a room is really where unique ideas with the potential for great income happens. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. I don't know if you could just go to slide number 3 and just to give a sense of the innovations that the people developed. Thanks. I kind of glossed over that one, but thank you very much. Oh, sorry, slide 3 of my one. Next. Yeah, number 12. Perfect. Thanks very much. Callum?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Evan. Ivan, if we can just go to the penultimate slide, and then I will. We can open up to questions. So a little bit further on. So 2 more slides on, please. And 2 more. And 1 more. There we go. Sorry, it's been a long day in Singapore. Perfect. So as a strong kind of call to action, we've got a few kind of next steps that all of you as country offices, accelerator labs, or your local and national partners can think about taking forward. So the first is, as we mentioned, there are more than 350 innovations that are now available to be tested, applied, adapted locally. Because these are all open source, all the code files, the schematics, the 3D printing files, if they need 3D printing, are available to download and for them to be adapted or applied locally. The second, as we've found out here, is that hackathons, but also leveraging open source in this way, is a real meaningful and useful opportunity to kind of build skills, particularly in the context of COVID recovery. One of the reasons behind us running this challenge in the first place was to go from very kind of global open source down to local implementation, recognizing that supply chains in the context of COVID-19 had been disrupted or very fragile. It's about kind of building skills and support on the ground, but also many of these solutions can be adapted or applied by entrepreneurs and other kind of SMEs and similar to start building or catalyzing local innovation ecosystems or local markets as well. As you've heard from the presentations as well, across UNDP, we have really extensive experience of running makeathons or building the skills and capacity to drive innovation. As part of this challenge, we worked with 7 country offices and accelerator labs and shipped them what we call response toolkits, which were 3D printers, laser cutters, and so on, to start catalyzing those efforts on the ground. So we also have quite a bit of experience about getting kit into country. Our deputy director right now is actually still wrangling with some customs authorities to try and figure out one of the countries, but can also advise on actually how you can run makeathons as well. And then finally, one of our big partners with this is an organization called Hackster, which is a digital online platform of makers and innovators, young people, old, around the world. And many of them are in many of the countries in which you're all working and operating. So the Hackster community are very happy for us all to run pages on their platform to call local innovators, to run challenges locally, to hopefully convene makeathons when we can start meeting face to face, but also for you to start tapping into a global and local network of innovators. So if you're keen to leverage that, please do get in touch and we can connect you with the Hackster team as well. Many of the hackathons that you've heard about today had expertise on the ground or participation from local Hackster volunteers. So it's a really exciting resource to tap into. And that's all from me. So thank you all for your time.
Great job. Thank you so much. And